President Biden delivered remarks at the White House focused on lowering health care costs and strengthening Medicare and Social Security.
The president was initially scheduled to speak in Florida today, but his trip was canceled due to Hurricane Ian. President Biden discussed falling premiums aimed at decreasing health care costs for millions of Americans. He also denounced congressional Republicans who are seeking to eliminate Medicare and repeal the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. President Biden ensured the protection of these programs will improve the lives of Americans.
For the last few years, we've faced some of the most difficult challenges in our history, but we're actually making progress, helping folks get just a little more breathing room. Lowering health care costs and strengthening Medicare is a big part of progress that we've been making on inflation, not just with gasoline prices and other progress. It's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about America's future.
Joining us now is CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thanks for joining us. You're right there, President shaking hands behind you. Tell us about, we expected the president to do this. What has propelled him in these remarks today?
Well, we were certainly expecting remarks about Medicare. What we weren't expecting was sort of a political speech that we ended up getting from President Biden at the end there, where he really went after Republicans 6 weeks before the midterm elections for being willing, in some cases, to put Medicare and Social Security on the chopping block, as he put it, because there are some Republicans who have proposed voting on these entitlement programs either every year or every 5 years. He made a full-throated argument here in the Rose Garden that puts these cherished programs at risk. Obviously, Medicare and Social Security, very important to seniors, and as we know, seniors vote. The rest of the speech was dedicated to laying out all of the ways that the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed this summer by Congress, will make prescription drugs cheaper for seniors. For example, next year, the price of insulin will be capped at $35 a month. In 2025, we'll see that cap on prescription drug spending, $2,000 a year for seniors. And then in 2026, so we're looking a few years down the road, Medicare will be able for the first time to start negotiating drug prices over a handful of drugs, about 10 drugs to start off with. So that was the case that he was making today, is that while inflation is still raging in this country and people are seeing their prices for all kinds of things go up, that his administration is at the very least trying to bring health care costs down for seniors.
And Nancy, I just want to follow up on something that you were saying before. It looked like the president was actually reading from the Republican pamphlet that Senator Rick Scott had put together about cutting some of those entitlement programs. Could you tell from where you were if that was what the president was doing?
That's exactly what he was doing, was sort of waving around this pamphlet that laid out Senator Scott's agenda. And yes, Senator Scott is one of 100 senators, but he's also running the effort this time around to re-elect Republican Senate incumbents. So he has a very prominent role, and it's the reason why the fact that he did this and announced these proposals several months ago kind of has become a headache for the Republican leader of the House, Mitch McConnell, ever since, who knows that this is going to factor heavily in, obviously, President Biden's message, the message that is carried forth by other Senate Democratic candidates around the country over the next 6 weeks or so.
You know, this is something that we were discussing earlier, Nancy, that the president would use Republicans' words against them. This is a really important moment, perhaps a political, it's not a political moment, but might become a political moment for the governor of Florida. So much of the conversation is around midterms happening in 6 weeks. How much does a message like this, at a time like this, when all eyes are on this storm, really move the dial for Democrats, for the president's party?
Right. Well, you know, one of the biggest challenges for this White House, certainly, but also for Democratic candidates, is the fact that they are the party in power and inflation is really high right now. And so anything that the president can do to sort of blunt the message that he knows that Republican candidates are putting forth throughout the country about the fact that inflation has gone up under President Biden's watch, he's going to do it. And one of the ways that he's trying to do it is to argue that costs may be going up for food, for home heating, rent, you name it, but that his administration is very focused on bringing other costs down. For example, in this speech, he touted the fact that for the first time in 10 years, the monthly premiums for Medicare Part B are actually set to go down rather than up. Now, it's not a big decrease. We're talking about $5 a month. $165 premiums per month will go down to $160. But the president looking for any excuse to argue that he is focused on cost savings, that his administration is focused on cost savings, and that Republicans, if they were to get power in the House and Senate, would look to roll back a lot of the savings that his administration and Democrats in Congress have been able to sign into law over the last couple of years.
Nancy Cordes, thank you.